right, this is Margaret Schlachter with Mud Run Guide. I'm here with Adam Kimble. We have we've just finished another episode of The Wheel, and yeah, we're here to talk about it.
Week 5 in the books. Happy Monday morning, Margaret.
Yeah, happy Monday morning. This is like our Monday morning ritual now.
Yeah, it is. I like it.
So let's jump right into this episode. I mean, last week it was all about food. This week it was all about you having food. So yeah. we saw at the end of last week that you had set up this fish trap thing. Can you explain like how you set it up? Because it was really hard to understand how the fish actually got caught in what you set up.
Yeah, funny that you say that, because as we were watching the episode, Karen, my wife, was very confused, and I got up and did a 3D visual for her to explain it. But so imagine you've got the oh, and by the way, I think I'm the only one that they haven't shown throwing the cast net, which some of the other contestants were getting flack for not throwing it the right way and stuff. They haven't even shown me throw it yet. I have been throwing it. They just haven't shown it. So that is happening. But so I took the net. So imagine you've got the circle, right? Mm-hmm. And I basically, I cut down some palm tree branches, or like roots or trunks, I guess. They're real skinny, but they're stable. So I cut down 3 of those and then jam those into the ground in the river. And so there was 3 points. So imagine like a triangle, basically, of the net, and it's nailed down. So you've got this point like this, and then there's an opening. So the fish can swim into the opening, but then they can't come back out. And what happens with the ones that I caught, they would swim in part of the fish, either the gills or some other part of scales or something, would get caught in the net. They couldn't get out, and then they would die, and I would go eat them.
Yeah, they made a big deal out of you walking into the piranha water. Did you have to like muster courage every time to step into that?
Yeah, I tried to. I know they like the voiceover guy mentioned that piranhas actually are attracted to movement, but I sort of did a little, like, every time I would get into the water, I would try to make as much movement as possible to clear the area in case there was something sitting there. Gotcha. I was more concerned. Obviously, I didn't want to get bit by piranhas, but I was more concerned with snakes. There's anacondas and stuff in that area, so I was more concerned with those kind of things. And just hoped that I wouldn't get bit by piranhas. And I never did, but there was a lot of really pointy things on the bottom of the river, so sometimes I would step on something kind of gnarly, but at least I wasn't getting bit by piranhas.
Yeah, and then I guess the biggest thing is you found, the mother lode of survival. You found those Brazil nuts, and I think, as the narrator says, there's something like 30 calories in every nut. So, yeah. And you had said, I think we talked off air before, that there's like a lot of nuts in each one of those little things.
Yeah, I could taste every one of those 30 calories in each each of the nuts. It's funny, I was ignorant to the natural state of Brazil nuts and what they were like. I don't know what I thought, if they were like walnuts where they just came on a tree and they were in the shells, but as you saw, they were actually inside sort of like a coconut looking shell. And then you crack that open, and inside are individual Brazil nuts. And there was, I would say, every single of the bigger shells had at least 10, usually more like 12 or 14 of those nuts inside. So I found 4 of them, and I ended up finding a couple more too. And that was huge for me to have that many. I mean, when I was finding very little to eat, that was really, really important.
Yeah, I mean, and we talked a little bit before, but in the show we saw you had like a pile of those nuts, like before you pulled them out, like I guess I don't know what you'd call it, the full shell. You had like a pile of those. Did you kind of store those away for later on, like add them to your rations?
Yeah, that was a common question that people were asking me, especially after the show aired, was could you keep those in your rations and bring it with you to another zone? And the answer was yes. I guess at some point, some other contestants, I think specifically Luke, had told me that someone told him he couldn't bring anything, food or things that you made, from zone to zone. But he also said that he was never in a situation like I was, where he had the opportunity to bring something like Brazil nuts to the next zone, something that you could keep from spoiling,
Yeah.
So basically what I did was so I'd been eating my trail mix as part of my rations, and I just took these Brazil nuts, threw them back into the trail mix, and basically replenished everything I had already eaten, which was really nice.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, that's and is is that the same nut maybe that Sean ate earlier on, but he ate like a bad one or something like that? Because I don't think they ever said what he ate, but it seemed
Yeah.
to look pretty similar.
We've speculated, or I guess Sean has speculated, based off of what some other people have told him and things that he's read, that maybe what he ate was castor beans.
Yeah, you don't
Which
want to eat those.
no, you don't want to eat those. They have like traces of basically poison in them. And so he's lucky that I mean, he was violently throwing up, but I guess it probably could have been worse too. I think the fact that he boiled them helped. If he hadn't, it could have been even worse. But yeah, I'm sure he wished they were Brazil nuts and not castor beans.
Yeah, I think castor beans makes like one of the serious poisons or something like that.
Yeah, it's I don't think it's something you want to mess around with. So assuming that that was what he was eating, that it could have been worse.
Yeah, so I guess speaking of Sean, Sean had a bit of a medical, he had the doctors come in and they said he hadn't had a bowel movement in weeks. It seems like Sean's having a rough go of it. So are you like watching him in the tundra and having any flashbacks to your own time there? I know you were there in the beginning, but
Yeah, I mean, honestly, Margaret, thinking about, I had a conversation with some family members after the episode, and it, I mean, we talked about how in the beginning of the show, they didn't air this, but the contestants all walked to a different colored Jeep, and that was what sent us to the first location, right? So whatever color Jeep we had corresponded to a specific location, and then from there, all the zones are predetermined. You go from one to the next. So a seemingly inconsequential decision like picking a color of Jeep ended up actually having serious repercussions on how you potentially did on the show. So my point in saying that is that Sean ends up in the tundra for 16 days, and I mean, as I've mentioned many times, the thing that makes the tundra hard is that it's barren and there's very little to eat there. So yeah, he ended up in a situation where he didn't have much food, and he's in a place where he can't really find any more food. So that definitely adds an element of difficulty to what he's doing. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see next week because like I said, I have no idea what's going on, but it certainly seems like Sean might be getting medically evacuated, which is interesting because in the conversation that he has with the medics right there, he's like, I know you guys have a lot of concerns, but I'm not ready to leave this yet. So I'm wondering what prompts that decision, if right there on the spot something happens, or if it's like a couple days later and, he gets worse, or, I guess time will tell on what happens to Sean.
yeah, yeah. And I guess the other big part of this episode was weight loss. And it's interesting because you didn't talk about it all in this episode, but Lindsay is like wasting away. Sean's obviously like wasting away.
Yeah.
Luke doesn't look so bad, but this was the first episode that I noticed that you looked like you'd actually lost a significant amount of weight at this point. Like you could see, like when you're in like your long underwear or whatever, all of a sudden I was like, wow, like Adam has lost a lot of weight so far.
Yeah, it was. I think it was most noticeable in my legs. Every time Karen is watching a scene that I'm in, she constantly says things like, your legs are crazy skinny, And I have a friend of mine, his name is Tim. He sent me a text message and made a joke about my legs too, because it's clear that they're getting significantly more skinny every single week. So yeah, I mean, it's a real. I can't explain in words how tough that becomes, when all you can think about is food and your body just needs it and it's not always there, and you just got to figure out a way to either push through it mentally or just make yourself feel better for a short period of time, whatever it takes to keep going.
Yeah, and I guess the keep going thing too, that feeds it into, I guess we're touching on like everybody today, but Luke kind of fell into a rhythm where he's been at now, and it seems like at this point he even talked about it, he was kind of bored. And he's building a chair, so maybe they wouldn't let him take the chair to the next the next one. But
Right.
I mean, did you ever have that moment? It seems like yeah, it's monotonous to be doing the water and all that sort of stuff, but it seems like it's so vital to do that you just would stay busy.
Yeah, it was really interesting for me to hear Luke talk about he's like, obviously I need the four vital things of food, water, shelter, and what is the fourth one?
Clothing, maybe?
Yes, I get, yeah. And so he talked about those four needs that he has, but then he also said, I think there's an additional thing of needing like a purpose and something to do. And I can honestly say that I was never looking for a purpose. My purpose was to take on this challenge and to do it in honor of my friend Mark. And outside of that, I was just trying to get by day to day. And I felt like for as much time as we had, obviously you're alone the entire time. For as much idle time as you might think you would have, there actually really wasn't that much for me, because between foraging, trying to fish, gathering firewood, keeping the fire going, things like that, it was like, surprisingly, a lot of times every day would go fairly quickly. Sometimes it would feel like it would take longer because of hunger, but the days would usually click along at a pretty fast clip. And I wasn't concerned about trying to add hobbies into my regimen.
Yeah, so I guess you mentioned Karen earlier in this interview today, but you talked about Karen on this episode. Well, you've talked about Karen a couple times on the show, but I think it was the first episode Karen was having an interview for a job, and now this episode you're like, well, I think she would have gotten the job now if she got the job. So,
yeah.
I guess for those that don't know where you are these days, did Karen get the job, and are you now in California?
Karen did get the job, and I'm now in California. We live in the North Lake Tahoe area. It's absolutely beautiful out here. It's great for me as an ultra runner because there's trails everywhere. Although we've been getting smoked with snow lately, so it's been harder to get out on the trails. But they do exist all over the place. And actually, I'm within like 30 minutes of a good portion of the Western States course, which is awesome because I've entered the lottery for that the last 3 years and hoping to get into the race in the next year or two. So that'll be good for training. But yeah, I had a feeling, I just had a gut feeling that because she was going out for an in-person interview, I thought that they would really like her when they met her in person. And so I felt like she was going to get the job. I found out after the fact that she was a part of a pool of 60 candidates. And if I had known that there was that many people applying for the position, I don't know if I would have been as confident. That's not a knock on Karen. That's just numbers,
Yeah.
But yeah, she did great. She got the job, and she moved us across country without my help. And then I came back and found out I was living in California.
Wow. I mean, like, that in and of itself is its own adventure. You get back and again, Karen wins Wife of the Year award for packing up all of your stuff and moving it across the country.
Yeah. I mean, it was, this is actually funny. I joked. So I recently had a conversation with Adam Klein, who was the most recent winner of Survivor. I don't know if you've ever watched Survivor before. Yeah. But he won the last season, and I reached out to him because he had a similar story. His mom was fighting lung cancer, and that was kind of his inspiration, the same way Mark is my inspiration. So anyway, I mentioned to him that I wasn't a fan of moving. I don't like the moving process, so it was nice that Karen was able to take that on for me, And then his response was, well, it's funny that you don't like the moving process because on the wheel, it seems like every 10 days, that's what you have to do. Yeah. So I thought that was kind of funny, but
true. Although you're just moving everything on your back, not
true.
Not furniture in a U-Haul.
Exactly. Yep. And a dog too.
Yeah. So I guess before we wrap up this week's, is there anything else that you think that kind of happened behind the scenes this week that we didn't get to see that you wish had kind of made it onto the episode?
This is just the some people might say stupid humor, but I think it's funny humor. But I've always been a fan of puns. I think that that's funny, right? So the fish that in the episode, so they as I'm gathering fish out of the net, I said something like, oh, there's more than one here. I think at the time there was either 4 or 5 fish, which was huge. But the one that they showed me cooking was like this long. And one of the like wilderness guides there told me that the type of fish is called an arowana. And so I joked that I caught this arowana fish and it was really big, so it was an arowana grande. So yeah, not some people might not be a fan of that humor, but I was hoping that they show that joke, but they didn't.
Well, now the world knows.
Yeah, I had to get it out there somewhere.
Well, great. I mean, I'm excited to see. It seems like the wheel's gonna turn next episode. We're gonna have a medical evac or something like that next episode. So it's gonna be another exciting one. Discovery Channel, Friday night, and check your local listing for what time it's on, depending on where you live.
Yep, exactly. Should be a fun episode. We'll see if it's if what we think is gonna happen to Sean happens, or if that's just a trick.